And you know, these kind of things that you think once, then usually they really repeat themselves. So in fact, I was called again in China by real chance in 2003, when there was the selection for the Olympic Games of 2008. And I was in the jury for the big pavilion in Beijing, the one which then was the Herzog and de Meuron, and also for the swimming pools. And it was a wonderful experience. I saw a very different China. But also I realized in 2003 that it was impossible for me as a woman working in Europe to introduce myself in China in that moment as an architect. So I decided, I like it, but I know it's not for me right now. And I left it in that moment without trying any competitions and so on. In the jury, you have to imagine that there was Jean Nouvel, Rem Koolhaas, Dominique Perrault, and Matteo, Kurokawa. Each of us was in kind of trying to find their way into the Chinese market. But at the end, we realized it was so difficult and so hostile that we all united together and became very friends in this kind of possible adventure of entering into China. And then one day in our office, where we do a lot of competitions, someone came and said, oh, there's a fantastic competition for the Spanish pavilion in Shanghai for the Expo 2010. Oh, this is impossible. We will never win as a Catalan group, or as a, we are not very institutional. But we did it. And the place was a very lovely place, you know. It's Spain chose just underneath one of the biggest bridge of Shanghai, the Lupo Bridge. And here, in one of these small pieces, we had to do a pavilion which had to represent Spain into an expo, which for the first time after many years would be again an expo of knowing each other. No? Because I think at the beginning of the expos in the last century we had this going and discovering new capacity, new technologies, and here it was again a kind of a meeting again, no? In China. In a place which was very curious about Europe and about the rest of the world, and the rest of the world very curious about China. So we were we had the task to explain Spain into a faraway country and to make it loved. And we decided, together with our team in the office, we have a very international team. There's people in the office from all over the world, and some of the people are here right now. And then we started together to think about how to represent Spain. Most of us, we were not from Spain. But we thought Spain was a kind of a fantastic place with a lot of energy, with a lot of dynamism. And also we had a lot of topics on top of our table, these flamenco dancers, the piazzas, the flowers, all these kind of things. Then we took all the topics, we throw them away, we substitute the building for a kind of a very dynamic geometry, and we decided to introduce in the building a material which is a handmade material. No? In the past expos, there was always the use of a very traditional material from Spain becoming something else. And now we were trying to transform, you know, to a different scale material done with hands. Also, Spain was fantastic in this production of handmade products, wicker products, but also coming from palm trees. And what we were thinking was that it would be fantastic in an expo called Better City, Better Life, to have a material like this one, really coming from the countryside, and trying to say that maybe a better city, it's a city which is introducing the countryside inside it, and try to transform and to use the capacity of a real land. And also this capacity, let's say the capacity of working with hands, with wicker or with natural material, is something so human. No? It's something that was always done in the same way in every part of the world. So we thought that this was a very good way of communicating, a very good language to enter into an expo, which was an expo between the rest of the world and China. So we started a fantastic tour in Spain, going and see these wonderful materials that some artisans still do. They are disappearing, you know, they are like some survivors in the land of Spain. And we were trying to transform this technique, this beautiful technique, into a big-scale building, which had to obtain this kind of transparency quality, you know, a building which we wanted to be a kind of a place where the transparency is not really letting you know if you are inside or outside. Then with this idea in mind, we had this very big surprise of winning the competition, and we had to realize the idea that we were telling to Spain. No? We were very afraid, actually I was very afraid until the very last moment where the pavilion opened, because really we were experimenting. We didn't know what the result would be. And we had a big responsibility on top of our shoulders. But anyway, we thought that for sure we had to try to use something that we could control a little bit. The geometry was very complex, but we could control a very complex geometry with this metal technique and with the tubes, metal tubes, in a kind of, how do you say, of a net, a big net of metal tubes. Also, we had a fantastic structural engineer who is a friend. He's called Julio Martinez Calzón, and he was he's passionate about China, so it was a kind of a double adventure. And we had this pavilion which will have a structure of metal tubes and a dress which will be a dress done by hands. So we were starting to think at the two things in the same time. On the metal tube structures, there was the ability of Julio helping us, and in the dress, of course, we had to be ourselves. No, we were talking with the artisans, but in the same time, we were also looking at fantastic people like Miyake, who are designing dresses, and we were trying really to design a dress. And we did it inside our office. No? Our office is an office which also uses the hands very much. No? You see here, there's a very big place where we produce models, a little like you do, but maybe you have more machines to produce models. We are still very, very artisan, very handmade. And so we started to think about how to make this wonderful dress with every mean we had in our hands. We were trying to understand how this skin could be kind of three-dimensional. We didn't want a flat skin, a flat dress on top of the geometry of the tubes. And then we realized that it would be impossible to do directly the wicker on top of the structure. At the beginning we thought it could be, but it would be absolutely impossible. So we had to have panels, and we decided that the panels had to have a kind of a good measurement. For example, 1x2 was a good measurement for transport. It was not too small to be put in many pieces. So this was given since the beginning, 2x1, okay. And then the geometry was tried very, very much while we were trying with the models. Then we were also doing with the three-dimensional models in the computer. And at a certain point, we decided that we liked this solution. This was a kind of a geometry which was covering the old geometry of the pavilion, but also was letting some spaces, some transparency, apart from the transparency of the material itself. And then we started to produce it bigger and bigger in the office, and some of the artisans that we met here in Spain were able to produce the prototypes. So the prototypes were sent to China in order to be able to reproduce 8,500 of them, which were the one we needed to cover all the dress in the outside and the inside. And we had other possibilities. No? The natural wicker can be done with different colors. So in a way you can do what is usually done on the little tools. No? This introduction of a decoration, of a motif, of something visible. And we thought that it was a very good idea, very good possibility to have different colors with the possibility of introducing on top of the facade of the Spanish pavilion a kind of a calligraphy. You know, when I go to China, I'm very impressed that most of the time you go in big places and you find big pictures which are only calligraphy. So you understand that there's the beauty of the writings, but also the beauty of the understanding and the poetry. So it's really a fantastic condensed series of arts together. So we asked Chinese friends to give us beautiful names, beautiful images, and these beautiful images were cast on top of the facade of the Spanish pavilion. So the Spanish pavilion itself was like a big calligraphy, a big poetry, and most of the poetry was dealing with the sun and the moon and the woods, the trees, the nature, also some symbolic names like Spain and China, but all of it was then made so big that nobody could really read it. No? When the Chinese people received the piece of news that there was a kind of a message on top of the facade, they became very angry, saying, it's impossible to read it. And we were saying, okay, it's impossible to read it, maybe it's much better, because then you have the possibility to let the elements read it. You know? So the sun, the wind, the rain will read it little by little and will change the facade during the 6 months of the expo. And another wonderful material which we had to deal with was the people. No? Here you see finally the plan of the Spanish pavilion. The center of the pavilion is an empty space, is a piazza, and from the piazza everything is happening. So this is the thousands of people which were lining every day, and then how the fluxes of people were dividing, going inside into the exhibition, going outside, and then dividing more the people in the piazza, and then having possibilities to enter into the restaurant, into the auditorium, into the many offices that were there. And the inside of the Spanish pavilion is a kind of a flow, a continuous space which is flowing all around. But we had to divide the flow of people, and then we decided to make furniture which will be very similar to the geometry of the pavilion itself and will not really divide completely the building. We'll make a division of people, but we'll let the vision go through. And we decided to use more natural material for these interior partitions, which is compressed bamboo, which is bamboo is very Chinese, and we decided here to be very Chinese, at least in the inside. Then the building side was a very fantastic adventure to us, really. It was kind of also discovering something very unknown. You have to imagine that at the beginning we were so much doubting, especially the client, about the Chinese capacity of building some very complex geometry like this, that they were imagining to build all the pieces in Spain and transport it to China. Of course, this was absolutely absurd. When a little information entered into our knowledge, we understood that China was perfectly able to understand our drawings, to reproduce them with the same computers programs, to cut them, and also to understand the technique of how to assemble this very, very complex geometry, which you really have to assemble with a lot of care, considering also the deformation of the material. And what I loved more was this kind of images, how artisan are the people who build also very big buildings in China. For example, here we have this bamboo ladder, but also everybody is using very, very easy tools, or for example, the scaffolding is also bamboo and is also, how to say, nearly the same thing that we were putting on the facade, let's say, And these capacities, I think it's really very nice, because this made me understand, going in a very far away country, that more than the differences, what interests me is the same things. Humanity is so much the same everywhere. We all do a siesta, the workers work also in the same way. And for example, going back to wicker, this intuition that we had that wicker was worked in the same way in Spain and in China, here we had the alive proof, in this place, I'm sorry, my computer is very, very old. But in this place, in the north of Shanghai, something like 120 artisans that usually work in the countryside united together in order to create, to reproduce this 8,600 panels, copying exactly what was arriving from Spain. They had no difficulties, and they could produce a kind of 2 panels every day. And also it was a very happy site, let's say, in all the construction site in the expo, which was crazy. This moment was the most relaxed moment. The people who was working here was very proud, because they were going from producing things from the country in producing something for a very big building, and also in producing something which will be very, very visible. And then the panels were arriving here to the building site. The building site is more complex. Here we already had the possibility to put the glass in the middle of the double layer structure, and also some of the opaque panels. And these lines that you see, this kind of hair that you see, are in fact the secondary structure which is waiting for the panels to arrive on site. And what I love more of this image is that you see that the panels are so similar to what is used in the real scaffolding of a Chinese normal site. So it was not a very big change, no? Let's say trying to come from this moment where the scaffolding are there to this moment where something very similar to the scaffolding is going on top of the structure and becomes the facade. Actually, each one of the panels were numbered. Each one of them had a very little label, because we were reproducing this very big drawing, very big calligraphy. And it was a mystery until, let's say, 1 month before the opening of the expo, how this would really actually be in the reality. So this image is very important to me. The image before was the scaffold still there, a kind of, I knew that everything was going on, but I didn't know how it would look. And here, suddenly, we became more relaxed, because we said, oh, it's very strange. It looks like a render, but it looks better. So luckily, it's becoming something special, something different, something very similar to what we have been thinking, but in scale 1-to-1, this is becoming true. It was as if finally this pavilion was becoming alive and was becoming like an animal. So in a way, from that moment on, we were approaching our pavilion as if it was an animal that you know, that it's domestic, that you love very much, but which has a life on itself. And also the life was transmitting maybe to many of the people there, no? Because the people liked things, for example, like the smell of the pavilion. The pavilion had a very, very lovely smell, because with the sun and with the heat, it was, and also with the rain, the smell was arriving, and in a very, very artificial place like an expo. This was a kind of a natural site. In a way, we usually work with the surroundings, and we like very much to mingle the buildings and the landscape. Here it was impossible, because there was no landscape in the expo. It was a very, very artificial site. But the wicker itself was working as a kind of a natural place, and also probably the geometry of the building itself. It was a kind of entering into a wood, or into the inside of an animal, or I don't know, a forest, or a place which is always different and which is always surprising you, but it's also giving a kind of cozy feeling. No, you like to be inside, and you like to get near to this living being, to this strange being. So in the inside, there was this transparency that we were thinking from the beginning. We were really looking for this kind of the light coming through this natural material and becoming like light through a wood. And you have not very much sun in Shanghai, but when the sun was clear, you had the shadows casting into the inside of the building, and becoming really something very, very special. And all this furniture, or these pieces, were designed in order not to interrupt this flow of the geometry of the building of the pavilion. And also it was very nice. I think the exhibition was one of the best. It was really by chance that two of my friends were selected to exhibit inside. One was Bigas Luna, who did a wonderful film with sound. And the other one was Isabelle Cochette, who did this very big, 5 meters high little baby, who was representing the future of Spain. So it was very lovely. She's a filmmaker, but she refused to transform the room into a dark room for projecting films, and she used the same light to make her intervention the very important one. So it was, in a way, like the big baby into the cradle. This was always repeated to me by Carles Padrissa, who is a theater man of Fura dels Baus, and who is very friend, is also very poetic, so he was always saying, the baby into the cradle, fantastic, the best achievement. Also in the night, this was becoming a kind of lamp. Of course, this is also a very good possibility of this material. The light inside is a normal white light, but then going through the material, it was becoming really a golden light. So this was a kind of an experiment we were trying in this case. We were risking, because we didn't know how the result would be. We didn't know if the Spanish people would be ashamed, if the Chinese people would hate it, but at the end we were lucky, maybe, and we think that things went well, and the Chinese people started to say, oh, okay, because you did the Spanish pavilion, why don't you start to make also something else? And the first thing they called us to do is in a town, you see here, no? It's a typical Chinese town. They say town, but it's about 8 million people, they tell me. And also Chinese people, you never know, they very much exaggerate about the number of inhabitants of a town. So it's very difficult to get the real dimension. But here in this town in Sichuan, which is a region near Tibet, I always think one day I will be so lucky that from this work I will go to Tibet. And here this man was born. You see in the statue, he looks very happy and he looks like a Buddha. And he's a painter who was born at the end of the 19th century, and he was called Zanda Chen. And of course, we went there and we became very friends, as you see. We had a good walk around, and also we started to learn a little more about Zanda Chen. He was a wonderful painter, and he was a real classical Chinese painter. And he was so good in reproducing Shang dynasties or other dynasties' paintings very, very, very precisely that he met Pablo Picasso. And this was the reason why they called us to design this small museum in the place where he was born. We say, oh yes, Zanda Chen had a big influence by a Spanish painter, so now we call a Spanish architect to do the Museum of Zanda Chen. And when they met, Pablo Picasso and Zanda Chen, Pablo Picasso received from Zanda Chen some brushes. And Zanda Chen was saying, oh, you are not able to use the brushes in the Chinese way, but Pablo Picasso didn't mind. He used them in his way. And he made this little sketch about his friend. Apparently, the wife of Zanda Chen commented in Chinese and said, oh, this is really horrible. And then Picasso didn't understand and say, okay, do you like it? I give it to you. and this is in the collection, in the private collection of Zanda Chen. And I think it's really wonderful. No? You really see a lot of the personality of this artist. And I think really Picasso is a fantastic painter, able to get the spirit of things and people. So we were asked to do this museum, and it is on top of a mountain in this town that you have seen. So we were very afraid to make a kind of a compact thing. We thought the compact thing would be used in two different ways. So we thought that we'd do some pavilions, and we used the Picasso drawings of Zanda Chen to become the footprint of the pavilions. And then here is how we started to move the pavilions on top of the topography of this beautiful mountain, little mountain, which is overlooking the river and the city. And we were, let's say, the shape, how to say, the elevation of these pavilions was coming from kind of taking some of the figures from Zanda Chen paintings, or from Zanda Chen himself, and we were trying of making this cluster of pavilions around the tea house and around the garden, because in fact this museum doesn't really have a collection, and they were never telling me what they would exhibit inside. So we thought that these pavilions could be in a way good for projections, or also good to look inside, let's say, to have glass, to give the possibility to look at the inside part of this walkway, and to contemplate the garden, and to be in a beautiful garden that we will be able for sure to recreate, because now we have the daughter of Zanda Chen who is giving us information about how his father loved to make gardens himself. He was a very good inventor. He was not only painting, but also inventing gardens, making his own pavilions, cooking. In the region there are many Zanda Chen's recipes. And then we are trying now to collaborate with the city of Nejiang in order to to make this, this place with no collection a kind of a very interesting place where anyway you can have a strong feeling, a strong touch with this painter who was born in these lands. And first of all, we had this meeting with rituals in China. Rituals in China are very, very nice, very strong. You know, they choose it was the first stone, but it's fantastic because they put the first stone and then we didn't go on because the project is not ready and they are still fighting about many things. But it was chosen on a very magic day, 1/1/11. So it was a day with all one in the date. And we saw all the display, you know, the display of people, colors, the architect introduced into this kind of big party where there are things flying in the sky, where the politicians are the main people kind of on top of a very red new podium. And also there is this kind of relation of the presence of the folk art, you know, with the many colors and these many colors going up into the stairs and really making the situation. But also what I love very much about this project is really to be able to live in a kind of a special moment. You know, Zhanda Chen was running away from China in '49 and he never came back. So it was kind of a sad story, you know. He had to change his painting. He met a lot of interesting people, but he was never back into his own country. And now China is changing and they are accepting that he was a great genius. And these people who is still the communist governor of the region is now coming to Spain to visit us or to learn a lot of things or to put Zhanda Chen together with Picasso. And we could make them meet this lady who is the younger daughter of Zhanda Chen, who never met them, who is a very high society lady who married in Madrid. And by chance, we were able to put them together in a dinner where we had this typical celebration, and one of the typical celebration is to make someone drink as much as you can. No, is a kind of a macho fight. So I'm very lucky because I'm not a macho and I can escape that. But Danny, who was here, was kind of destroyed by this terrible fight, you know? And in fact I was with the daughter of Zhanda Chen making presents and all sorts of nice things. So all this part is very nice. I love going to China even if it's not an easy place because there's a lot to learn and there are a lot of fantastic tradition that makes you understand that it's a real old country and that we are very, very newcomers, you know? So we have to both learn a lot. And this is a very small park, always coming from the expo in Shanghai. Someone from the garden expo in Xi'an said, you did the expo in Shanghai, why don't you do a little garden in Xi'an? It was another expo, which was in 2012, and no, 2011. And then we decided to continue on this love we have for Zhanda Chen. We took one of Zhanda Chen paintings and we cast it on the plot, and then we started to give some definition to the lines. So some of them would be little bamboo walls, some of them would be walkways. It would be a kind of a labyrinth, but totally done with natural material. This was done, was very nice, but also it was supposed to be a lot of vegetation. But then we discovered that in Xi'an, really vegetation is not the easiest thing to grow. You need years to have a good vegetation. So in a way, we accepted that it was mainly the natural material, but the vegetation was kind of fake. So in order to accept a little more colors or to introduce a little more colors, we had these paper birds which were put into the cages, and people was playing the game where we were there with these birds to introduce them into the cage and then to take the photo of themselves. Then meanwhile, we had a very, very big project asked to us. No, I was kind of surprised. One day we went to Shenzhen. They said, oh, the same client of the museum said, oh, we have to ask you something. I said, yes, what? Would you accept to design a tower of 50 stores high? And I said, yes. And then they gave us this this design. No, it's very, very strange. In Shenzhen, there are thousands of towers. No? Really, to say 50 stories high tower in Shenzhen is something kind of normal, a normal building. But we were very, very happy in order to give some special tower to Shenzhen. No? So we started to have a different proposition made to the client. And the client had in his contract that he wouldn't sign the contract until he had a scheme that he would like very much. And we thought it would be very easy. And they said, oh, fantastic, very lovely. Can you make another one? I say, so you didn't like it? No, we liked it, but please do another one. Okay. Then we did another one. They say, oh, it's really beautiful, really beautiful. Can you do another one? As we started to worry a little bit, you know. And then another one, and we did another one, and then we started to realize that maybe they wanted something more simple, and then we made something which was very, very easy geometry, but dealing with colors, it was the worst. They hated colors. It's something that they thought it was like carnival, no? They were doing something serious, so out, and then we started to be really afraid, no? Because we were at try number 8, and they were always saying, oh, it's beautiful, but please do another one. And then we started to say, okay, they like the Spanish pavilion, we will take the geometry of the Spanish pavilion, and we will make it as a 50-story tower. And this was kind of, more or less, maybe if you do 2 more tries, then we can choose. And then we had this one that we called Bamboo Tower. They loved the name. And also the geometry of it was kind of special. So this apparently became the one. So we were kind of more relaxed, and we started to develop this geometry, which was not truly a geometry like rotating. It's not rotating, but it's a geometry which is making a slight difference between one side and the other. And so the building is becoming, the tower is becoming something which is really changing from the different sides. And we were developing this, and this started to be the one that they liked. No, we were, you know, going into more details. How many pillars? How is the facade? How is the corner? How is the podium? The podium is very, very important because it's in a way the most public part of the building, and we were trying always to remember this idea of the bamboos. No, we loved very much the fact that also they accepted the tower as the bamboo tower, and at least the podium had to maintain this idea of some bamboo structure which would go together and make really the structure of the podium, and also made the shadows and the light enter inside through this this structure, which then will repeat a little bit in the tower. So these are the renders. I don't love renders usually, but it's absolutely necessary in a way to have a conversation in China, to have good renders. So we accepted the fantastic renders that they are done in China, more structures and less in movement, and then the opening on the ground floor and the inside of the podium with this presence of this kind of bamboo structure, very, very visible for everybody. So we are developing that. We are waiting for the client to build. And meanwhile, we were doing a lot of things. I don't know, now I take my my watch out because I don't want to be too long, and I never realize how long I speak. Okay, very long, so I will finish soon. And this was another competition we did. Meanwhile, you know, we did competitions for a comic museum. It was good because we did a competition for Disney Shanghai, and soon afterwards we were called to design in Hangzhou, in a beautiful lake in Hangzhou, the museum for the Chinese comics. Then we imagined a series of boxes with comics coming out, with comics inside, and the presentation went kind of okay, and I think now we are very up to date to present this, because here there were many buildings already existing, and I was not conscious who designed this building. So someone in the jury told me, but aren't you afraid that your new building, which is here on a new island, is covering the view of these buildings? And I said, oh, but never mind, no, these buildings are not so important. Anyway, you can see them from in the middle. And in fact, this was, the juror was the same architect, and nobody told me. And we didn't win the competition. We were finalists, yes, but we didn't win. And the architect is a fantastic architect who is now receiving the Pritzker. He's 1-2, and no, I really accept the judgment of the jury, as you always have to do when you do a competition. And a project by RM from the Dutch studio was instead selected, and now they are fighting for having the realization of this museum, which I think it's a very good counterpart to what is Disney, let's say. It's a kind of the Chinese possible Disneyland in Hangzhou. So now we are on another project in Shanghai. This was also another competition. And here we were a little more lucky because we won it. It's a university. It's a university in the middle of Shanghai. Actually, we are in the middle of a new piece of city. A new piece of city which is designed with blocks. And what the dean of the university asked to the competitors was, please make these 3 blocks, which will belong to the university, as integrated as possible into the city. So we tried very much at the beginning with these cardboard models to try to see how the volumes of this could work. And at a certain point, we understood that it could be a kind of a series of buildings which look similar one to the other, which had a kind of a similar geometry, which had doors which will permit to enter to the very different courtyards. And inside the courtyards, you had a kind of a soft architecture breaking up and becoming a kind of a landscape, so the students and also the people passing by could stay in the heart of this courtyard and could have the feeling of a continuity of the space. So now we are really uniting all these buildings in a kind of a enormous big block, uniting the 3 blocks with a kind of a urban piazza at the upper level, and many doors making the flux of people going through. And, well, I think I have put too many images of that. This is now on top of our tables, are changing all the time. We are always unsatisfied. We want this, we want a little different. The dean is asking for many different solutions. We are fighting with Chandai, who is our engineers, and they are very, very, very powerful. So we are in the middle of the process. But what I like very much is this idea that these 3 blocks of a university, a manager university in China, will be very much integrated in the city and will be really part of the city. So the main important places are those, no? This kind of spaces underneath the roof, which is going outside in the courtyard, but also which is creating kind of interior courtyards where people can study, people can meet, and I think nowadays these public spaces into a university are the places where you really learn a lot. Maybe a little more than inside the real classrooms. I don't know. I have too many images, I think. We go fast. This is Hamburg. We are working in Hamburg. We are very happy. We did a harbor which is now dedicated to people. They told us maybe that we did a too much Barcelona space, but I'm very happy about these photographs, which is demonstrating that when you give a good public space, then people is using it. And so now the Hafen City in Hamburg is becoming more dedicated to people and is becoming very, very much, instead of an industrial harbor, is becoming a city. And also we go very fast here. This is something that I like very much because we just opened. It's a music school, always in Hamburg. See, where people is learning music and dancing, and then we had to make an extension to the music school, and this is the Google image. Wait a second. And now the music school was extended. We had to extend it ourselves. You see, like with this building here, we did a kind of a brother to the existing school that we built. And I don't know if you recognize that. That is a Renaissance building, which is one of the first circular buildings of the Renaissance. Is done by Bramante in 1908, and it was really fantastic to have the opportunity to make an exhibition next to this place. So we had our friend painting, and we were thinking that this exhibition would be Capriccio Romano. You know, Capriccio is one of these fantasies that painters were doing in the past, using pieces of different cities and assembling them together. And this wonderful Tempietto by Bramante could be also part of this exhibition, which was taking place here. And I don't have now the photographs of the real thing. I took today the photographs we had in disorder in the office because we just came back a few days ago. And I try to explain you how it is alive, let's say, to prepare an exhibition where you don't really know how the result would be. Here we were putting in place this kind of collage in scale 1:1, collage with different pieces of Rome fragments, and also some pieces of the Tempietto, which was on the next courtyard. You know? So the people would enter inside, see the Tempietto in the reality, and then coming to the rooms and see the fragments from Rome recreated in a kind of a collage 1:1 by us, and together with the paintings of our painter friend who were painting Rome without looking at Rome. So here we have this montage. Making this exhibition is really fantastic. You need a lot of energy, you need a lot of people, but also it's very energetic, no? Because you really see the places changing hour by hour. Everybody's working, making this kind of reproduction of the Tempietto. The different pieces of the Tempietto are recreated in different cylinders, so that you have a perception of the building in a different way. And also some pieces of Rome are in kind of collage 1:1, which is then becoming useful. No? It's becoming like a bench or like a table or like a place where you can put your glass, and then Rome is becoming something like a very, very domestic landscape. This was our effort in doing this exhibition. So also together with the domestic landscape, pieces of of my own house was going into the exhibition and making clear that all that we were doing was trying to make Rome, which is sometimes felt as so monumental, a little more familiar, a little more domestic. So here are the paintings and the pieces trying to go together, and hanging and welding, a lot of things. I have a lot of images because I didn't have the time to select them. It's just everything that we were shooting, and then the fragments of the tempietto going on, and then some other fragments of Mercati di Traiano taking place, and then you see all these fragments are going together with the little paintings, and finally we had this wonderful installation, which I was very proud about, because we put some cushions with the same drawing of the real pavimentation of the tempietto inside the tempietto. So the tempietto, which is usually a place totally closed, for that exhibition became a useful place where you could sit and have a chat. Here we are together with my painter friend, and it was becoming a little more hippie. So in a way, I'm very happy about that. On the night of the exhibition, we had some fire inside, and all the children of the people who was coming for the exhibition was jumping inside and was happy. And for one day, this tempietto was becoming something different. So I was very happy, and I was saying thank you to Bramante to be able to be our best collaborator. So thank you very much.
Yeah, we can see in your works a very really sensitive approach to an ambiguous approach also to things like time, traditions, even craft, for example, craft technologies. Until which point these things are, do you use it as metaphors as the ignition point of the idea that produced the project, or do you see them as really producers of innovation through the projects?
I don't know really. Sometimes I think most of the things we are doing, we are first doing them, no? And then we say, okay, we like it, no? You don't really have a real explanation why. And then maybe you start to understand what you are doing, maybe, no? For example, when we are doing these games with reproducing Bramante floor and putting cushions on the floor and reproducing the Rome things, we're not very sure why we're doing it. But at the beginning we have the kind of a feeling that this is fantastic. And then maybe I understand that this is to make architecture more domestic, or to make things more near. And so I think I understand things while we are doing, and maybe in a way what I like more is this, no? This feeling of easiness, or good feeling, or really feeling at home in a place. This I think is very important.
Okay, so maybe then I think that we could have questions in a more informal way. So I would like to invite you to have a drink. But before that, Benedetta would really like to thank you for here with us. And I hope we will have you soon again here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.